So I'm Kenny Sanders. I've been producing a biodiesel sidecar for the past 18 weeks. Essentially, it's a motorcycle with a 10 horsepower diesel engine shoehorned into it because diesels have a tendency to be much larger than a standard gasoline engine. And then we wanted to attach a sidecar to it that would be capable of producing biodiesel out of waste oils, such as what you'd find in like a old fryer-later, canola oil. We can also take oils out of algae nowadays to make biodiesel. And that's made through a process of transesterification, which I'll go into a little bit further later on. But essentially, this would allow you to go for hundreds of miles filling up at every fast food joint instead of gas station. And that seemed like a hell of an idea to me. Why biodiesel? As I went through earlier, it's a renewable fuel source. It's also carbon neutral when burned in any internal combustion engine. That means that as you burn the carbon, it's taken back in by plants in photosynthesis, and then we use those plants which produce fatty acids, long chains of hydrocarbons. We take those hydrocarbons, pull them back out of the plants, and make more biodiesel with it, and this results in no extra atoms being released into the atmosphere. And that's really great because at the moment our world is suffocating in our own fumes. Gasoline engines produce 90% of the carbon dioxide emissions in the US, the other 10% being industrial vehicles. You also have power plants, other things. Those are running on coal sometimes, so that's a bit different. But our environment is suffering because of this. And as you can see in the left picture, that's the cycle of biodiesel and how it's produced. And in the right picture, it's basically a demonstration between diesel and biodiesel and how much cleaner burning biodiesel is, as you can see by the soot in the candle on the right, which is diesel. And I mean, that's just a great demonstration of how horrible our atmosphere is suffering. Why a motorcycle? Biodiesel itself isn't going to relieve our energy crisis. While we're looking for a more renewable fuel source, while this may be nuclear fission, nuclear fusion, other possible fuel sources that don't produce nearly as horrible byproducts, biodiesel offers a way to reduce that, but it doesn't reduce it enough. We want more efficient vehicles. We want motorcycles, which are capable up to 100 miles per gallon on gasoline as it is. Diesel is even more efficient, could offer even more than that. And that's just a great option to have. Motorcycles are inherently more lightweight. They have a smaller engine. This means they produce less emissions, as you can see on the left side of the picture. On the right, you also have more cargo space with a sidecar as opposed to a motorcycle, mainly because you add an extra wheel, you can add an extra person, and mom won't be so worried about you because you have an extra wheel and can stay upright. Additionally, I chose to use a motorcycle for my design because the parts are readily accessible for me. My father has about 3 acres of old motorcycle scrap parts lying around in New Hampshire, and I figured I'd put this to good use. So, what are we going to do? We're going to go through a process here. We're going to go through research, design, and construction, or production. And that basically entails basically any process that an engineering company would use to produce any prototype. So if I'm going to follow this, I should put in as many hours, I should put in as hard of labor, and I should focus and put as much detail into it as any person producing a prototype or inventor would do with their project. So I've put in already hundreds of hours on this research, design, and construction, and that's what I would hope that any engineering company would take, except they're going to do it with a lot more people and a lot less time. So I may not have finished completely. I'm going to work on it through the summer, and it's going to be an awesome engineering feat and a great teaching tool for Mr. Chinosi later on next year. that being said, the research portion of my project is basically, I had to learn about diesel mechanics, I had to learn about motorcycles, and I had to learn about the production of biodiesel. 3 simple steps in research. As far as diesel goes, I already have a job working on diesel engines over at the Department of Public Works, so I was kind of set there. I also did quite a bit more research into it online, legitimate like readings and papers from the EPA and everything. As far as motorcycles go, I've been working on those since I was 8 with my father. He's had me pulling apart motorcycles for him and putting all the pieces back together if he wants them. And that's taught me a ton about the older motorcycles, and that's perfect because those are the parts I'm working with. And then biodiesel, I have I keep saying doctor. I have Mr. Chinosi there to aid me. I learned about all the steps of production, why biodiesel isn't being produced, like mass produced, mainly because it interferes with the oil consumption for like food products and other things. People reuse canola oil and motor oil and everything that we could use in making biodiesel, so that it's a competitive process. And I learned about how you can use biodiesel in standard diesel engine as long as it's post-1992. That's due to natural rubbers and other factors when designing the engines. We didn't have biodiesel back then, really. And that's just a great start for me. As far as design goes, that was my hardest part. I had to basically put together the pieces in my mind and in sketches and drawings for myself without even having them in my hands. Imagine trying to put together a Lego set without knowing that the pieces are the right pieces. You don't. So that was a very challenging part of the engineering of this, and I like to think I overcame that a little bit, but it's basically a step-by-step process. As you run into that problem, you fix it and hope that more problems don't arise. It's like a leaking hole on a boat. You put a patch on it, but it might pop up in another spot. And that's basically it. On the left, you can see in the slide, that's the engine I used. That's a Kubota one cylinder, 10 horsepower engine. Rotates at about 3,600 RPMs with a 1-inch drive shaft, 1/4-inch key. That allows me to mount a centripetal clutch onto it. This is a very primitive sort of drivetrain, which I'll go into further. And then I'm going to mount that into the frame, which you can see in the middle picture is just a motorcycle frame to give you an idea. And then on the right side, we have a water heater, which is basically the production of the biodiesel. All you have to do is mix the oil with about half the amount of oil with ethanol or methanol, either one works. And then you have to add a catalyst, which is normally hydrogen peroxide, or you can use other peroxides too. You heat that to about 220 degrees, and the process of transesterification happens. I hope you guys took chemistry back in 8th grade. Basically, that's when you pull the glycerin off of a triglyceride. Triglyceride being a fatty acid molecule, which is 3 hydrocarbon chains attached to a glycerin. You pull that glycerin off, replace it with ethanol, and you make a very usable fuel in all diesel engines. And the advantage of this is that through that chemical reaction, you also get separation, so you can pull out the byproducts of the process, and you get a more refined fuel than diesel would ever be. Now, going into parts finding, I had to find the frame. I had to pull it out of a giant pile of motorcycle frames that my father had been accumulating for years. I have pictures to pass around if anyone's interested. Basically, it's a Honda VFR 700C frame that I dug out of this pile. It was about 30 feet high. It was right in the middle of it. This frame's yay long. You'll be able to see it shortly outside. And the advantage of this frame is it's aluminum. It's very lightweight. It's relatively easy to mount to because it's a box frame. I can drill holes through it, put bolts through. I didn't have a TIG welder. I'm working on getting one right now. They're a little bit expensive, but that would allow me to add aluminum weld points to the frame, make it a little bit easier to mount the accessories, lights, alternator, anything else I need to put on it. And that's the advantage of the frame, mainly. Now, the second part of this was I had to put wheels on it, make it move. Yet again, I have a huge pile of wheels. I don't know which one goes to which. I had to sort through that for hours on hours, finding the right wheels to fit in there, finding the right wheel bearings, finding the right axle. It was a pain in the butt, excuse my language. Secondly, I had to find a diesel engine. I had to find something that would fit into that frame. And the engine compartment on that is not the biggest, but it did allow me to get it in. I had to cut one side arm that held up the original engine, but that's okay because I'm going to weld that back on now that the engine's in the frame. The engine compartment was so small that I had to actually reduce the original engine size, or horsepower was 76 horsepower. I ran it down to 10 horsepower. Now the advantage of this is that diesel engines have much higher torque, much lower RPMs though, so this allows you to accelerate at a much faster rate, but it doesn't allow you to go at such a high speed. And that's okay because this is a prototype. If this were to be mass produced, I mean, we'd obviously have a standardized transmission in it, and you'd be able to ride it probably on the highway and everything. Finding an engine is not easy. Diesel engines are not consumer available. The EPA doesn't allow you to purchase any engine to a residence, any diesel engine to a residence, without having it being mounted by a professional, and it passed undergoing like all these EPA certifications for nitrous oxide production, sulfur oxide production, and carbon oxide production. So this was a very difficult part of my process. I ended up waiting about 4 or 5 weeks to get the engine. I ended up shipping out to Illinois, and I had it shipped to a friend of mine who has a mechanic shop, so that bypassed the EPA. I hope they never find out. Third, I had to mount the sidecar. That's not too difficult. It's 3 mount points. You have to specially make them. We're okay. As you can see on the right side, that was, by the way, where the frames were. That's my father's shop in New Hampshire. Next, we had to plan ahead. You're not going to be able to ride this thing without having a seat, without having brakes, without having suspension, without throttle control, lights. You have to think about these things before you go and mount the engine just willy-nilly in the engine compartment. I had to allow room to, I'm going to add on a generator head to the end of the drive shaft, which will allow me to produce energy. Hopefully it will be enough wattage to power both the water heater at the same time as provide power to the glow plug to warm the engine and to power the lights. That's still a work in progress. I haven't gotten to that point yet, unfortunately. But that's one of the problems. In addition, I also have a motorcycle that my dad dug out of Cooper's, the place where I got the frame and all the parts. And that's actually a full bike that's the same model as what the frame is. So that allows me to mount a lot of the additional parts to it. I'll be able to take the kickstand. I got to replace the forks. Just all the parts that are on that will hopefully be transferred over, minus the engine and all of the related components. In the right picture here, you can see the sidecar before I mounted it. This was when I was planning ahead. I took a good 3 days to do all my measurements, to plan out where the sidecar is going to fit. You got to figure out geometry, because when you take a right turn on a sidecar, the wheel will tend to pop up. It's part of the forces in riding a sidecar. And when you take a left turn, the wheel will skid out. And this puts a lot of pressure on both the wheel on the right side and the frame mounts. And I had to account for that. It comes with a lot of geometry, a lot of angles, and I still have to put one mount on there that will basically bolster from the engine to the sidecar, which will also allow me to have a little bit of adjustability in the weight distribution. because ideally you want to go 40% in the front, 40% in the back wheel, and 20% in the sidecar wheel. So I'm going to have to work on that a little bit. On the left side, you can see it's like putting a square block in a circular hole. It's really not that easy. You have to plan these things ahead. So I go on to mounting the frame and the engine. And in these two pictures, you can see from the right side view on the right and the left side view with me working on it on the left. And this was a very tedious process. I had to use 2 car jacks to lift the engine up into the frame of the motorcycle. I then had to manufacture the mounts after getting the correct angling on the engine, because it's supposed to sit at about a 10-degree angle. That's to allow for acceleration and the force that's applied to the engine when it tries to turn the rear wheel. That allows me to basically play around with it, the jacks underneath, and I can play with the height and everything. So I put the engine up. I have 2 rubber mounts and 2 solid mounts. This will allow for vibrations to move the engine, but it won't move too much. That's also standard on a motorcycle. So I'm trying to stick as close to like the motorcycle guidelines as possible so that we retain the standard advantages of a motorcycle, the movement and the acceleration. So basically, I put it on the motorcycle lift and put the engine in it. Simple enough, right? It's not really. The engine's 200 and something pounds. You try getting it up there. Next, I moved on to the powertrain and clutch. Here you can see me machining the rear sprocket and getting it ready to put onto the rear wheel. I had to basically design the powertrain myself because you can't find a centrifugal clutch that will run on 520 chain, which is what was originally intended for this bike. Instead, I had to go with a centrifugal clutch with 428 chain, which is still heavy duty enough to power a 10 horsepower engine connected to a rear wheel. I then had to deal with the gear ratios. The front clutch is 14 teeth, and the rear is now 56. This allows for a 4-to-1 gear ratio, which should allow for a decent amount of torque while getting you up to speeds of up to 20 miles an hour. That's perfectly fine for as far as I'm going. I'm just going around the parking lot, hopefully. This was very difficult. This was probably the most important part of the bike because otherwise it won't move. And I mean, there's no point to a bike that doesn't move. The centrifugal clutch is a very interesting design. It basically has 3 friction plates that are around the drive shaft. And when the drive shaft spins at a faster and faster rate, these plates expand. And it hits a bell housing on the outside. And it basically just makes the bell housing move. And as those friction plates spin faster and faster, you get more and more friction against the bell housing. And eventually it'll be completely turning the bell housing at the same speed as the engine. This also allows you to throttle down, and the friction plates will come back towards the drive shaft, and this allows the clutch to freely spin, so you can coast. It's a very simple transmission. It kind of acts like a continuous transmission, if anyone's ever experienced that. They have them in the smaller smart cars and some of the smaller, like Vespa scooters and whatnot. As far as accessories go, this is the VFR that I was talking about. It's a stock bike. I plan on pulling that apart. I already took the seat and the gas tank off because I'm not going to be able to use those on the bike due to where the engine is mounted. That's okay. I planned ahead. I have a Harley seat that's going to go on instead, a tiny little bugger, single person only. And I'm going to put the main gas tank will be on the sidecar. Directly off of the biodiesel production. In addition, some parts are unnecessary. I won't need the clutch lever or any of the engine parts from this, so some of the stuff's going to end up going back up to New Hampshire. It's perfectly fine. And some I'll obviously be able to transfer, which will be a great use. This also allows me to see how the original bike was built, so I can try and emulate that as best as possible with the diesel engine. That should also allow for styling. I'll put the side covers on eventually. In addition, the purpose of this biodiesel sidecar, it was never to ride. I just wanted to be able to prove that, one, you can put a diesel engine in a motorcycle. Two, you can basically get anywhere you want without using standard gasoline. And that's a big advantage over our everyday consumer cars, because how much are you paying at the pump? 60 bucks, 70 bucks per fill-up? You ask McDonald's to give you free canola oil, it's free. It's perfect, right? So we move on to, this is never going to be street legal either, because one, it doesn't have a VIN, doesn't have any of the paperwork, no title, no nothing. I'd have to go through a custom creation. It's a pain in the butt. We're going to stick with it on the sidewalks. So what do we do with it? We give it to Green Engineering, because they're going to have a great opportunity to teach other kids about what biodiesel can do for the world. This will also allow us to hopefully make more strides and advancements in renewable energy sources and others like that. And I think that the money I put into it is worth it to let other kids be able to research what I've already learned. It's that valuable to me. That's basically it. As far as looking forward, my website, kennybiodieselsidecar.com. Feel free to look up. I'll keep it updated throughout the summer, probably into the future, assuming I keep working on it. This isn't going to end up like that rusty Corvette in your auto teacher's garage. This is going to be done. I have all summer. I love working on this thing. It's become a passion of mine. And hopefully we can change the world doing it, right? I appreciate your time, guys. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Any questions?
Yeah, one for you, Kenny. One of the things I always wonder about biodiesel in general is you said like every time you pass a fast food restaurant you can fill up for free, and that's a real advantage. There's also the kind of like the consumer guilt that goes with like just going up to McDonald's and asking if you can take their free grease. Like, do you see a connection between maybe like fast food consumption and
I can see the connection, but if you're using biodiesel, you're probably helping the environment so much that we could care less if you get a little chubby around the belt. So I think that's okay. I don't have any guilt going up to where I work and saying, hey, can I steal this 50-gallon drum of canola oil? It's not like you guys are doing anything with it anyways.
Yeah, stealing it back.
Well, borrowing it.
Give it back.
Yeah, totally. Anyone else? Okay.
Can you, when you started the planning process, you said it was the most challenging part for you, sort of, as opposed to getting right to work on it.
Right.
How were you able to make the bridge?
Between like planning and construction?
Yes.
I still haven't.
Okay.
It's still going. As I construct, I have to plan ahead. I have to think about what I do today is probably going to affect me 2 months down the road when I'm trying to fit something in right next to it. So as that goes, that's why I'm using the bike. The original bike is more of a template so that I can see where the original parts were, see which parts I'm going to need, and say to myself, okay, I need this space to keep open for the air box. I need this space to keep open for the generator head. I need this space open for the chain to run from the rear wheel to the clutch. Like it's really not like a step-by-step as much as I wish it could be. It would be more if I was at like an engineering firm with like all the resources available. I'm a high school student. I'm doing my hardest out there. And planning ahead is just a very essential part of the process.
What are you going to be doing next year?
I'm going to UMass Lowell for mechanical engineering. I'll probably minor in computer engineering. I'm also going to be looking for a job as a mechanic, hopefully out in Lowell, so I'll be able to provide for myself while I'm out there.
You talked a little bit about some of the problems of using biodiesel on a greater scale. Can you talk about that a little more, the
Absolutely.
The aspect?
Um,
Trying to understand.
There's 3 generations of biodiesel. First generation is based upon food stock oil. So that's your pure canola oil. That's the stuff you buy at the supermarket. You got your second generation biodiesel, which is based on feedstock oil. This is what we would give to our cows, our chickens, like soybeans that are waste. This is also the waste oil that we would find outside a fast food restaurant. And then you have third generation biodiesel, which is still being developed. Mr. Chinosi is working hard on that, actually, if you go down to green engineering. Basically, you take all the fatty acids out of algae, which have been genetically engineered to produce about 90% of their body mass, well, cell mass, as fatty acids, which that's very advantageous because that means you don't have to have like a large, wide field for these. You can grow like a small, little box worth of algae on top of water very easily, and you can produce quite a bit of biodiesel out of that. The issue with the first 2 generations is people still desire that type of oil. Currently, we have no use for algae oil, so it's not very competitive. That's why biodiesel is such a rising fuel source at the moment. Still, these days we have, I think it was something like 70% of biodiesel produced is still first and second generation. The other 30 is only algae. That's rising every day. So hopefully we'll see a great increase in biodiesel in a few days, or a few weeks, few months, few years.
Do you have to grow your own algae, Kenny, or like can you go to your regular old pond in the middle of the summer when it takes over the entire surface and just kind of scoops them out?
It does need to be a special type of algae. Otherwise, you're not going to have that much fatty acids produced. It's not going to be very, you're going to waste a lot of energy trying to filter out those fatty acids. And in doing that, it's not going to be nearly as efficient. It won't be carbon neutral at that point because filtering out those fatty acids will take more energy than the biodiesel produced will create.
And how do you filter it out?
Fatty acids are separable through water. Basically, you grind the algae to a mush and run water through it. This pulls out all of the chlorophyll, all of the proteins, all of the plant matter, and oil, as we know, doesn't dissolve in water, so it stays in the screened out area. It's a relatively simple process. Yeah. You good?
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for your time.